able to utilize the recording in the future. Before I get started, do I have any initial questions that you would like to have covered throughout the session this morning? And if you prefer not to speak, I completely understand as well. And you're more than welcome to use that chat window in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You'll see that's where I placed the phone number and the room. And then just a reminder, you'll also want to make sure that you do call into the line.
Good morning, is Stephanie?
Yes.
Yes, this is, we're calling from Northside Independent School District.
Is this Julius?
No, this is, what you might have is Sarah Walker.
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay. I myself is Jay Lawrence, and then Sarah, the property manager. So
okay.
We have a question, if that's okay.
Of course, yes.
Sarah?
What is the difference between having an asset that has been disposed versus having an asset that has been archived?
All right, so that's a great question. And actually, we can go and look at that kind of a little bit more in the application. I think information makes a little more sense in that manner. So I'm going to go ahead and shift over to share my screen, if that's okay. So when we're talking about different statuses within the application, it's a great question. What is that difference between disposed and then archived, right? Archived is what I call the end of life kind of status of a tag within the application. So give me one moment. I'm going to kind of move over to the application, if that's okay. And I love that you're bringing me a question right away, by the way. Okay, so what you should see my screen. This is a training site. Just to note, it will definitely look different than probably what you see within your application. So when we're talking about statuses for a tag, there are various statuses such as available, in use. Let me actually go to a tag so that we can see all of the different statuses. So just, I'm a visual person myself, and so I like to kind of go and show that.
Stephanie, I'm sorry for
yes.
interrupting. All right, we're signed in. We're on a screen that says, Welcome, TIPWeb-IT Administrative Q&A Session. So I don't see a split screen yet.
Okay, so you are not seeing, give me one second here. Thank you for actually mentioning that, because when I share, I do see that you should be seeing our application. I also have Debbie Disler on the line, and I think I have Gina as well. So you guys actually are pretty lucky. You have a couple additional kind of experts of the application. Debbie and Gina, can you tell me what you're seeing? Okay, Gina, you can see my screen. Debbie? And Gina and Debbie, by all means, you can chime in as well. I think I see Tina's checking. I may swap back really quickly and see if I can make something. Okay, Tina, you can see. Okay, so Jay and Sarah, I'm going to go back to the home screen real quickly, and you should see, tell me if anything's altering on your screen at all. So I've moved over to the welcome slide, the TIPWeb-IT Administrative Q&A session. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the share option that I have. And I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully that'll kind of, has your screen changed yet?
No.
Okay. And it's just stuck on that first screen is what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay. Now, because others are able to see it, would you mind just kind of Xing out of it and coming back into the room for me, the webcast?
Yes,
of course, stay on the phone line. Technology, right? Many positives and then some every day.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right.
You're good?
Correct.
Perfect. All right. So you should see my screen then. I'm going up to my quick search to actually go to look at a tag. I'm on a campus actually, so I can kind of show you the different statuses that are there for a tag. Now, I just want to make sure you said the difference between disposed and archived. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay. So when you have a tag, as you see here, that there are various statuses that I'm able to use. Even auctioned, which again is another kind of end of life, which means that it's no longer going to be utilized within the application. Disposed is the same. So potentially these are more of what has occurred with the specific device. So in these statuses, auctions means just that. A lot of school districts will send out some of their maybe parts of their assets, like laptops, where they can't utilize the entire thing, but other entities may be able to utilize parts of it, right? And so they may send it off to be auctioned, and so that would be a status. And then disposed would be those that can no longer be used. They just have to be sent off to be disposed. Now, within the application, you're going to have in use, so that's maybe those assets that are issued out to either a room or even a staff or student. And then you'll see the other statuses like lost, recycled, which is another end of life, and so forth. So when we're talking about statuses, that first one of disposed is just a status that's kind of specifying what was the end-of-life status of that specific asset. And so that just helps with kind of tracking capabilities when you're looking at reporting and so forth. I know a lot of times, especially when we're talking about a specific type of like federal funding and so forth, you have to be able to say from, I call it, I know it's more of a shipping terminology, but cradle to grave. And so the second a asset comes into your application to the time that it's no longer being used, right? I know E-rate's one of those big ones that funding you have to be very particular and track everything. So when we're talking about disposed, I'd be able to come in and change the status of any tag to disposed, as you see here. I'm going to go ahead and click go. But now when we're talking about archiving, now that this asset has been sent off, it's no longer actually being, it's no longer on my site. So I really do not need to see this information on all of my reporting, so all of my active tags, right? Because otherwise you could just have this super long list of information that you really, it doesn't relate, you don't need it. So in that scenario, you then go and you archive those tags so that you can kind of clean up your database. And the way that you do that as, of course, you will have to be an admin. So I'm going to switch over to my admin view.
Let me ask you a question, Stephanie.
Sure.
But let me, because as we go along, this is going to be new. We haven't actually have done a complete inventory in TIPWeb yet using TIPWeb. So this is new to our district. So
Great.
whenever what's the basic? I know you'll probably do this, but I want to make sure I get this question before on this part. What is the best way to, because we dispose of items all the time. I mean, that's something, it's in life, then we send them off, to be recycled. Is it best case scenario to go ahead and archive them right after we dispose them, or just, is it up to the district level, up to us to say, no, we can keep them in disposed status, on there. So what's that kind of best case scenario there?
Yeah, great question. My first piece actually thought is exactly what you said. It is really dependent on your district and your kind of policies and procedures, your processes, correct? Actually, I'm going to actually ask Gina, if you don't mind, Blankenship is on because she actually was at a district. And I'm curious, Gina, if you don't mind me calling you out, if you would tell us what your district actually did.
Oh, no problem, Stephanie. Normally, I would leave things in disposed for the year, and then part of my year-end process was to archive anything I had disposed during the year. That way, once you archive something, it's gonna drop off of your reporting for the year. So at the end of the year, I just like to have that one last report that showed all the movement of assets in the district for that entire school year, and then I would just archive before I started up the next.
Perfect. And you'd run a report then, kind of your end-of-year reports, so that you could have those for future if you need them?
Right. And then
Perfect.
and then like Debbie's note about auditing, then you wouldn't have to worry about those showing up on your audit.
Yes.
Because they're not in your district, they won't end up as missing on the next audit.
Exactly, and then you would just have a bunch of missing tags in there. And actually, to add to, thank you for that, by the way, Gina. Sorry. I was like, ooh, Gina's
No
on
problem.
here. And then Tina also mentioned we hold them in a gone room. So they create a virtual room until we decide what to do with them. So in their scenario, now, Tina, that's a great comment. Do you then still at the end of the year, do you archive? And then Tina also mentioned that they will just skip the room, that specific room, so the gone room, so to speak, when they do their audit.
Great. That helped us out quite a bit. So thank you for
Great.
that.
Good to hear. Of course. And Tina is still responding, so I'm going to go ahead and see what she says really quickly, and then I'll show you about that archive piece. And archive has actually been kind of expanded more recently, and so I think you'll appreciate it. Okay, great. So I guess those were the last comments they had. So I'm going to go ahead then, Jay, and I'm going to show real quickly where you can go to archive. So let's say it's the end of the year. You've pulled the reports that you'd like to save, and then where you will come is under the admin view. I'll come to the admin tools archive. And within the archive window is where you'll be able to come. I'm not going to walk through the entire process because I know you're not there right now, but you can always call us. And then we have, of course, online documentation. But this is where you could specify catalog items, inventory items, and even staff and students. So you'd want to come and do those inventory items. And then you just go through and follow the filtering piece, which what status is, even prior to date, which sites that you want to archive for, and then, of course, adding some notes so that you have that for the future. Any questions?
No, that's good. I think that kind of answers our question as far as, because we were kind of like had the big question mark. What's better to keep it in disposed status just in case? Because
right.
What can happen is even though we dispose of an item, somehow during our process, our current process, we still get items that get put back into circulation.
Right.
And so if it's back into circulation, we want to make it active again. Can it ever, if it's ever been archived, can it ever come back to an active status?
Yes, actually it can. And the way that we do that, I'm going to show you, it's not going to be exact, but I'm going to show you very quickly. Let's pretend that I had archived my tag 5455. Where I will, it's individual based, so I'll come over into my tag information window and use that drop-down menu again, and at the bottom there will be an unarchive option for you. So if in those scenarios that something comes back in circulation, I've heard many scenarios of where we thought it was gone or went disposed, but somebody grabbed it and they started using it. Well, of course you want to still track that asset, and so you are able to come in, but it's on a case-by-case basis.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, of course, no problem. And then Tina, thank you for your note. She mentioned we have not archived yet, so they haven't done that piece themselves, but they have a site we move the assets to or the tags to, because she said the same thing, because some of them end up coming back into play. So, something happens where it's like, nope, actually we can use that specific asset still. So I love that you guys are thinking kind of ahead of there's potential they're going to come back, and what process will we use to ensure that we can bring those then assets back into circulation, so to speak. Great. All right. So do I have any additional questions? I really do appreciate that, by the way. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move into the admin settings for TIPWeb-IT. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. There's quite a few. We may not hit them all this morning, so I'm going to definitely focus on kind of some of those areas that maybe need a little bit more attention to detail. Let me go ahead and shift over. So under the Quick Links Management, I have my district settings. This is where, as that admin, you're going to be able to kind of create some settings for the overall district, so all sites, campuses that you have, but also it's going to be even dependent on types of processes such as transfers and even user roles, so those site admins and those site users. And just a quick question, I know that you said that you're just kind of getting into the application, Jay and Sarah, and Tina, I know you said you are interested in these settings. Is there anything in particular that you did want to talk about so that I can make sure to cover those? Or you just want to you want to see it all?
We'd like to see it all.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So when I first come into my Manage District settings, the first area that kind of expands is going to be just the application settings. So it's going to be my homepage image. You'll see we have our example of our homepage image. One note I do want to make here is the size recommendation, and it actually is specified here, which is at 400 by 100 pixels. If it's either much larger or much smaller, it will be skewed. And of course, you want a nice clean image of your district's logo. So just to note that. This is where you're going to be able to specify the timeout control. And again, this will be for the entire district, so all users that log in. I can set an idle time of 15 minutes or 30 minutes, which means that the application will actually kind of close out after 15 or 30 minutes, and this is just security purposes. I do have some districts that say, I don't want it to ever close out. Well, we get nervous about that because this is some pretty important information, and you don't want someone to accidentally come in here and maybe make an update or an edit that you did not want. And so I don't know if we'd ever get to that point, but at this time you do have that 15 to 30 minutes where if you did have to pull off of the TIPWeb-IT application and move over to some other work, you're able to come back within those time frames. When we're talking about inventory management settings, this is definitely one of those areas that has a lot of information that will be very pertinent to many. So the first is inventory transaction history for room, staff, and students. And so you have the capability to show all, so there'd be no date limitations, as well as even show after a specific date range. And so what you have to ask yourself in this scenario is, do you want to hide older data that's been collected or returned from showing up on like receipts and inventory history screens? So again, it's about how much of that information that is not relative at this given time do you want to show up on history in areas and different kind of receipts and so forth. So you can even specify show everything, I'm okay with that, or only show after certain dates. Maybe you change this annually or biannually, just so that it doesn't kind of cloud your information. You also have student inventory data. So this will automatically transfer student inventory data, and this is when students, those items that are issued to them, if they move from one campus to another. And I know this is something that happens fairly frequent within school districts where a student may move from one campus to another. It could be from elementaries or even when they move up from elementary to middle school. So you can actually have their items transferred with them. With audits, you have district-initiated audits are approved by, and you can specify if they're approved by the site admin for each site, or if it's only at the district level that can actually approve audits. You also have the manual synchronization of found items across open audits that have been reconciled, and this one is a little particular, and so this I do not know if it would really pertain to many districts actually, but overall the concept is once an audit has been closed and it can no longer talk to other audits, but with the found synchronization or found sync, you're able to kind of click a button within your audits, view site audits, and you then can say, hey, go and check to make sure that any tags that were expected on my site were found anywhere else. But there are some caveats to this one, just note, which again, if you get to where you'd like to really focus on this, call us and we'll walk you through it. I also have allow quick tag verification on tag information modal or window, and there is a capability. We have what's called quick verify, and this happens in the tag information window, but you can also actually allow it within the audit where you can do a quick verify of a tag. You have disabled tags from being collected if located at another site, and that is exactly what it says. Is it just prevents where am I at here? It prevents, tags from being collected if located on another site. And then the next piece, when we're talking about inventory management settings, is going to be tag status. This is a newer area within the district settings. And I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of these, and we'll talk about them. So I have lost status, and a police report number and attachment is required. I also have lost status requires approval, and then I'm going to have the same options, but for stolen status. Stolen status requires a police report and attachment, and also requires an approval. A lot of times districts have some sort of document. It may not be a police report. We've heard that a bit, where it may be just more of an internal document, but where if there is a tag or an asset that has been put into the status of lost or potentially stolen, that has to be filled out for kind of tracking capabilities. And here you can actually specify that you also would require a police report number and then that attachment. And again, the police report number, it could actually be an internal number if you are not actually externally going out and getting an actual police report number. And then it requires that attachment, so some sort of documentation that kind of describes, of course, what the what happened with the outcome and so forth. And you would do that for stolen as well. You also have enable, disable statuses for sites and departments. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one because it's going to expand the window for me. Here you'll see it even specifies these filters will allow you to set the statuses visible when changing them at the site and department level. Do I have anyone on the webcast that has departments?
Yeah, we have both, what you call, what you're saying sites is where we consider our campuses, and then of course then we have the department. So at Northside we do.
Okay, but do you know, Jay, if you have our departments feature? If you're uncertain.
I'm uncertain, unsure.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is because there are some variations if you have the departments feature, and you will know them. I'll show you briefly what it looks like just to be safe, and for those that will be watching the video later. When you initially come in, a majority of our districts, it will look like this for them. And what I mean by that is there is not a departments aspect involved. Now, if I do have departments, I'm going to log into, we have a separate department training site. So if you bear with me, I do want to show you just to make sure that everybody is aware. Here we go. So when I go ahead and go into my district settings, my inventory management, and that enable disable status is here. If you do have departments, you will see this option here as well. So I just want to note that I'm going to go ahead and utilize this training site just so that we have it for both views. So if I come in here and I decide I really do not want my site to be able to choose a certain status. So maybe it's the status of disposed. It's like, you know what, that is only a status that I want to be able to utilize at the admin view. And so I can actually come in here and disable it. Now, in the typical district settings, that would be the endpoint of what I would need to do. I just come in here and I disable that specific status. And then when they go to change the status of a tag, they would not see the status. Now, with departments, I can actually then enable only for specific departments. So maybe it's that only one department within my entire district should have the capability to utilize this specific status. So maybe for me it's disposed. I'm just going to just use any department and say this department is the only department that is able to utilize this status. And so I could even add more. As you can see, I have a little checkbox options here. But the overall concept is if there are statuses that you prefer that your sites not be able to utilize, you'd come in here and you would just disable them quickly. Notification settings, you will see that I have one option here. It's notify user when collecting tags that are in repair. And so this is a quick little note that, thank you, Debbie. It looks like neither of you have departments who are on the live webcast. Thank you for that, Debbie. But this will just give a quick little pop-up when a tag is changed to the status of in repair that just says, note that this tag is in repair. So it's just a quick little note. For user role settings, this is an area I'm going to spend a bit of time on because we're talking about the variance between site admin view as well as the site user view. There's been quite a few additions to the site admin view. We're definitely looking at kind of expanding what permissions that this view can have at the site level. So they can restrict bulk room-to-room transfers. You can restrict site admins from associating tags to purchase orders, from creating new room audits, so if you only want that to be able to happen at the admin view, from editing products on a district purchase order, from reconciling district-initiated audits. This is a newer one where you can actually allow site admins to reconcile their audits. And so that's definitely, again, a very district-related kind of preference. Restrict from reconciling site-initiated audits. Also from quick transferring of inventory when deactivating staff. And if you hover over any question mark, it can give you a little more details within the application. And this specifies allow site admins to quickly transfer inventory from one site to another during the deactivation process. For site users, there's just a couple. Restrict from creating new room audits, so if they are allowed to create room audits or not, as well as from shipping initiated inventory transfers. Under transfer settings, this is another area where you'll want to definitely kind of look at your current processes and see how you prefer to have your settings. You can, this is regarding restricted funding sources, if you use those within your district, but you can enable denied asset process. And again, if I hover over, it's just going to tell me tags with restricted funding source can no longer be deleted by the approver. They'll just be marked as denied and will unblock the transfer from being able to be submitted. With site-to-site transfers, you can specify initiated transfers require an approval. And this will mean that the receiving site will need to approve the transfer coming to their site before it can actually be shipped. Inventory receipt from a site requires approval from. When enabled, you can specify approval from site admins as well as district only. Transfers require a digital signature to be captured. This is one I believe quite a few districts do appreciate because it has that kind of digital aspect where you can actually have a signature that will then be tied to that specific transfer. Site to warehouse and warehouse to site have some similar settings, thank goodness. So the initiate transfer requires approval, and that will be, again, that receiving side will have to approve before that specific transfer may come to their site. Again, inventory received from a warehouse requires approval from. Transfers require that digital signature. And then the additional item, because if you do have the warehouse feature, and again, this whole area is actually regarding kind of the warehouse feature, transfers require driver and delivery date pickup date as well. Talking about warehouse features, this feature also you will only utilize or have if you have the add-on warehouse feature. And this warehouse transfer request settings allows the district to add a default request agreement, or even you can have a customized agreement that would need to be tied to a specific product. So you would come here and tie it to a product. So anytime that product was added to a transfer, there would be an agreement that the individual that is submitting would have to virtually sign before that actual transfer would be able to move on to the next step in the process. Do I have any questions on those?
A lot of information. Thank you. Looks good.
Great. Yes, great. Now, we already at the noon hour. There are a couple of other areas that I think are definitely crucial. I'm going to just hover over them very quickly just to make sure these are ones I believe even after the session today you'll want to kind of go and take a look at. These are going to be email notifications. There is quite a bit of information here in setting up various email notifications within your application. When it first opens, it will open to audits, and it's regarding some compliance emails that can go out, some due dates if your district utilizes due dates, even distribution. So if you want to allow sites to send email notifications to staff or students, and so here you can actually customize the email that would go to students and staff, so you can kind of make those specific to them. You have also for some status approval, so this kind of ties into what we discussed earlier about that lost and stolen statuses. You could actually have emails that go out on a nightly basis that if tags go into the status of lost or stolen in that specific day, that an email will go to specific email addresses. Status changes, you can do the same with specific status changes. So as we're talking about earlier, this disposed status, maybe you want to get a notification each night for all of the tags that went into the status of disposed. You can put your email in here. You can also add emails. You could do a custom email list where you could hand type in. You just want to make sure to use a comma in between each of those email addresses. For transfers as well. So some notifications regarding transfers, maybe if they require those approvals, if they've been denied, delayed, and so forth. And then those restricted tag notifications as well, if that's something that your district is focused on. And then the warehouse transfer request, which again relates to warehouses. So if you do have that warehouse feature, you would just be able to come in here and kind of take a look. But I'm going to just go ahead and close out due to time restraints. The other item is report settings. I think is going to be quite beneficial for you to review. When you come into report settings, it will expand initially to the compliance report. The compliance report is somewhat of a new feature within the application, and this is tied to audits. And this is where the district can actually have where they can specify if a site and or audit is compliant or not. And then you're able to, for the compliance report that is under the view site audit, you can actually put in specific verbiage that is relatable to your district. The other reports is the distribution receipt. And this just allows you to automatically upload signed distribution receipts to staff or students, as well as potentially the tag. You are able to put your logo, which will then display on the distribution receipt. And then you are able to customize the text for the students as well as staff members. So those are just some other areas I would highly recommend that you can kind of dive into. An area to go would be the help, which you'll find in the upper right-hand corner of your application. So you can quickly come in here and do a search, and you could search for email. And then the other location that I would highly recommend is going to be our support center. And so you would get to our support center quickly by just clicking on the orange link, which is located under the quick links section. So you just click on support center. And because I was in the admin view of the application, it takes me right to the admin view. And then here there's a plethora of information for you. I highly recommend using the resource library where you can utilize keywords to search for. So again, we could search for email and you would be able to find information regarding email. All right. Do I have any additional questions before we close out the session this morning? I really do appreciate each of you joining me, and I hope that you were able to leave with a little bit more information. And definitely I'm looking at some of these scenarios. 30 minutes just may not be enough, right?
Definitely, this is Debbie. One of the
Jay from Northside and Lawrence and Sarah. We appreciate everything, and I'm glad these are some informative sessions that I think will definitely benefit in the future. So thanks again to Tina and Debbie as well for giving us input. All right. We thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being so active. Debbie, did you have a comment?
Yes. So we've got a district preference checklist that covers all of the topics that Stephanie's gone into and that kind of highlighted. That's something that we can go ahead and email to you all. So it gives a little bit of information pertaining to how you might want to select the different options that are available to you. So I think it would be helpful.
Yes, definitely. I will email it out to the individuals that are on this session this morning. And just know that that is an evolving list as we continue to add features to the application. But I will send that out to you shortly after the session this morning. And thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your busy days and sitting in the webcast with us. And we look forward to seeing you in the future ones.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.